Every generation has its own villain. But horror villains don't just appear, they evolve. From cursed men to cosmic entities, as horror diversified, its villains evolved to capture different fears. So today, we're breaking down the 9 evolutions of horror villains, the monsters, madmen, and nightmares that built the genre one scare at a time. Classic monsters. This is going to be the Mummy, Frankenstein's monster, and the creature from the Black Lagoon. The ones that started it all, these universal classics, are some of the original icons of horror. What's interesting about these 3 is how tragic they all are. The Mummy was looking for his lost love. Frankenstein's monster wished to escape judgment and loneliness. And the creature from the Black Lagoon? Yes, he was dragging people under the water, but his actions come across more like a cornered, curious animal. These were monsters, but in a rudimentary surface way. Underneath, they were sad creatures reflecting human struggles. Some other examples are going to include the Bride of Frankenstein and King Kong. Over time, with these monsters, we felt more pity than fear. And with that loss of fear, our villains had to change. Cursed men. We've got the Wolfman, Mr. Hyde, and Norman Bates. These are ordinary people who transformed into monsters by some kind of external trigger. The Wolfman continued the cycle of violence lived by all werewolves. Dr. Jekyll's experiment brought out the worst side of him, personified by Mr. Hyde. And Norman Bates? Years of trauma inflicted by his mother eventually warped him, causing him to murder while dressed as the very same mother. These villains weren't from castles or tombs, but instead cursed men, letting their worst sides take a hold of them. Some other examples are going to include the Invisible Man and Medusa. When these same curses began to lose their impact, the psychology of the mind would take center stage. Human psychopaths. This is going to be Patrick Bateman, Hannibal Lecter, and Annie Wilkes. The 1990s showed us that villains didn't need to be wrapped in bandages or skulk around the woods under the moonlight. They could dine in fancy restaurants or even love to read. Hannibal Lecter was the smartest man in the room, and if he wasn't, he would probably eat that other person. Patrick Bateman was a stock trading model with a razor-sharp jawline. That didn't stop him from engaging in murder as a hobby. And Annie Wilkes? Ahead of the curve by decades. She's the original crazy superfan that you really don't want to meet at Comic-Con. These killers weren't tragic or cursed. They were self-aware. They embraced who they were and liked it. Some other examples include John Doe from Seven and Catherine Trammell from Basic Instinct. Starting the decade before, but going full steam ahead in the 90s, horror had another face. It wasn't about psychology. It was plain and simple. All that mattered was the killing. Slashers. We've got Jason Voorhees, Ghostface, and Chucky. Whether it was a machete, a hunting knife, or something in between, slashers stabbed their way into the culture with brute force. Jason, Ghostface, Chucky, different shapes and sizes, but one shared concept. Unstoppable death. For these villains, horror was about rules. You break them, you die. Simple, effective, and from a fan, very fun. Jason brought the body count and the cliches. Ghostface pointed the cliches out without holding any punches. And Chucky? He laughed and swore as he handed out his brand of terror. Human or supernatural, it didn't matter. The slasher villains put themselves in the pop culture, making them a brand of their own. Some other examples include Angela from Sleepaway Camp and the Miner from My Bloody Valentine. When the kills and masks started to grow a bit stale, an undercurrent of terror was still growing strong. This terror couldn't be reasoned with or even recognized. Modern monsters. We've got the Thing, the Blob, and zombies. Instead of one person, this time, the villains were the loss of personhood itself. The Thing, the Blob, zombies, all shapeless, relentless, and contagious. The time for talk and reason was done. These villains consume. The Thing represented paranoia. The Blob was government experiments and disease. And finally, zombies tapped into an existential fear. What happens if I stop being me? Modern monsters weren't tragic. They weren't even here to kill. They were here to devour and replace. Some other examples include the infected, for you 28 Days purists, and body snatchers from Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Continuing into the modern era, the villains got even darker than monsters. Instead of just killing you, they wanted to really hurt you. Experts in suffering. This is going to be Leatherface, Jigsaw, and Art the Clown. These are the villains who believe in suffering. Jigsaw tortures his victims while monologuing about morality. Leatherface has his whole family join in the sick, horrific carnage. And Art the Clown? The clue is in the name. He turns pain into an art form, silently amused by the suffering he inflicts. These villains don't just want death, they want to work for it. They want to have you saw off your own leg just to see how badly you want to live. They want to hang you by a meat hook as your boyfriend gets butchered. They want to torture you for hours and then come back with bleach and salt just to make sure you can still feel the hell. The rules are back into horror, but this time it's a test of endurance for the audience. Some other examples include the Firefly family from House of a Thousand Corpses and The Devil's Rejects, and then the Cenobites from Hellraiser. But what about when suffering isn't enough? What happens when the villain doesn't just break your body, but your reality? The supernatural. This is going to be Freddy Krueger, Valak from The Nun, and Candyman. Moving past knives and pain, we arrive at the living nightmares. Freddy Krueger doesn't break through your door. He invades your dreams. Valak is a demon that can only be fought with belief. And Candyman? Try the opposite. The more you believe, the stronger he gets. These villains are immortal in one sense or another because they're not really alive. Faith or fear fuels their existence, and that is always in strong supply. They can't lose because by giving them attention, by acknowledging them, you're giving them exactly what they need to thrive. Some other examples include Bagul from Sinister and Samara from The Ring. These villains survive on belief. Others exist beyond belief itself, beyond space and time. This is going to be Pennywise, Pinhead, and death itself from Final Destination. In other words, cosmic horror. Pinhead is after much more than your mind and body. He wishes to tear your soul apart. Pennywise isn't really a dancing clown. He's an ancient, interdimensional parasite that feeds on fear. And death itself from Final Destination, there's no reasoning with, fighting, or escaping. It's a literal force of nature. These villains aren't about killing you. They're reminders of how small and fragile humans are in the greater universe. Some other examples include Cthulhu from the Lovecraft mythos and the Tall Man from Phantasm. Bigger than all of that, all of the monsters, the sadists, the cosmic entities, we come back to the truly eternal figures. Timeless. This is going to be Michael Myers, the xenomorph, and Dracula. Every era of horror has icons. They can evolve and change over time, but some never go away. Dracula, Michael Myers, the xenomorph. These are villains so perfect that they transcend generation, culture, and context. Dracula is the eternal vampire, a classic that never grows old. Michael Myers is the embodiment of evil, an empty shell to transplant all of our fears upon. And the xenomorph is the perfect killing machine, an apex predator on the top of the food chain that makes advanced humans look like primitive beings by comparison. Some other examples include witches and the devil. These villains are always relevant because they go beyond one generation's fear. They are fear. Horror villains evolve because the terrors keeping us up at night are constantly evolving too. Whether it is curses, psychos, monsters, or entities beyond description, they all reflect moments in time and the fears that keep us up at night. Sometimes it's our own minds. Sometimes it's pain and suffering. And sometimes it's a good old-fashioned monster. Thank you so much for watching, and let me know which evolution of the horror villain scares you the most. Could you also like, share, and subscribe? It truly means a lot. And until the next time, what's your favorite scary movie?